Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Sports on the Positive Tip. We have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith, and I'm here with Kenny Squared. What a week. One of the busiest sports weeks that I can remember. And if you're a fan of the Masters, which neither one of us are golf guys, then it's an even bigger sports time of year because the Masters is starting. It's a big deal, obviously. But Kenny, I'll start with the other night, George Soler and Reynaldo Lopez throwing hands. The Angels and I can't imagine the Angels and Braves have a rivalry, but I guess, he's been wearing out his former teammate and he threw at him twice. And the night before that, we had something with Contreras, who's been getting thrown at all the time by the Brewers. I guess most of that was when he was with the Cardinals. But this one turned kind of serious as Soler's throwing punches, and then you notice something about what Lopez did.
Yeah, I noticed. Well, it's obvious he has the glove on, but then he's holding the baseball and punching him with a full hand baseball.
I mean, and then and I didn't notice that until you told me, and I went back and watched it. I was like, and he landed one of those landed pretty solid on the side of his chin. I never saw that before. Every year we're gonna see stuff in baseball that we've never seen before. I've never seen that before. I've seen pitchers throw the baseball or throw the glove at somebody charging them. I never seen them hold it like that and then take a swing. And I mean, Solera's a big dude, man. And I say that because Walt Weiss, the new manager of the Braves, who's not he's a New York guy, by the way, who's not a very big man, who's I think 5'9", 5'10", 160. He's about my size. He goes in and he tackles Soler. He gets him down to the ground, and stops something from seriously going. But Lopez was retreating, man. He's like, "Uh-oh, I clocked him once or twice. Let me get out of here." So you don't see those too often in baseball anymore. And then they both got 7 games. But did I hear that Lopez's was reduced?
Yeah, he's going to be able to make his next start, which kind of to me, I hate the way that they do pitcher suspensions because it's like
Yeah,
you suspend him for 5 games, it's nothing. Like,
yeah,
well, he's not getting in the game anyway.
yeah. It doesn't make any sense. Um, I think we talked about this in the opening last week, or the NHL for a second, because their playoffs are getting ready to start. They don't have the play-in like the NBA has. In the NBA, like the play-ins and everything seem to be set. Not who's playing who, but I think we know what teams are not in the play-in in both conferences. But in hockey, I think we mentioned how the Vegas Knights fired their coach very late in the year. Now they've gone and they hired John Tortorella, who's coached here in New York. But they've gone 4-0. Since they fired their coach and they brought in Tortorella, who's a very experienced and very good coach. But then the same thing happened this past week with the Islanders here, who are on the brink of the playoffs. I haven't checked whether or not they're going to make it today. I know they were kind of on the periphery there, but Patrick Waugh, who was a Hall of Fame player, goalie, but not with them, right? He didn't really have the ties to the Islanders. Patrick Waugh was with Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, for a long time. They fired him with 4 games left. So why does the NHL just fire coaches like that?
I don't know. It's so interesting to me because, like, I would understand it more if there was, like, I don't know, the Carolina Hurricanes in 2012 fired their head coach with 5 games left and then they won the Stanley Cup. But
Yeah,
like there's not really that precedent. And we see it really in all of the sports. Like if you fire a head coach mid-year, it's very, very hard to actually win the title. The
yeah,
only one that sticks out to me is the 2016 Cavs who fired David Blatt when they were the number one seed halfway through the year, and
yeah,
then they ended up winning the championship.
yeah,
But like, there's not a lot of examples of that. Like we've seen first year head coaches, managers like Terry Francona is one that sticks out. Alex Cora, um, but like typically you don't necessarily see like a guy mid-season. I mean, the Nuggets last year with
yeah,
Malone, like they didn't do
yeah,
anything in the playoffs. It's
yeah.
very interesting.
That was one of those rare NBA ones, because that happened very close to the playoffs, right? But to the end of the season. And then they didn't go too far in the playoffs. I remember they got to the semifinals. One president, and we'll talk about this first as we go into our regular show. One of the presidents that I remember was 1989, and that was the last time that the Michigan college basketball team, had won the championship. Right? They had been in the Final Four several times with the Fab Five and a few other times, but I forgot who they fired mid-season or late, very late in the season, but they brought in Steve Fisher, who turned out to have a great career, not just at Michigan, 'cause he wound up taking them to a few more Final Fours, but then he was at San Diego State for a long time as well. But they went all the way to the championship, and the big thing was that it was Bo Schembechler, I believe I pronounced his name right, who was the athletic director, but he was like the football coach from like the 60s and 70s. And they said, "Hey, are you going to give Steve Fisher a chance?" Steve Fisher really had only been an assistant coach there for a little while. And he said, "No, no, we're going to hire a Michigan man. We're going to hire a Michigan man for coach our team long term." But then he had no choice. The guy wins the title. He has to bring him on. But that typically, you're right. That typically never works. I mean, it gives a temporary spark, but it usually doesn't work. Ready to go into our other show, our regular show?
Let's get into it.
All right, we've got we'll put a quick cap on the Final Four. Tiger Woods, Dexter Lawrence. We'll talk about Gino Auriemma, Michael Malone, the Knicks, baseball, inspiration. Let's kick it off. This episode of Sports on the Positive Tip is brought to you by the Tavern Coffee House. Attention coffee lovers. Are you craving the perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Well, look no further than the Tavern Coffee House. It's located at 12302 Buckeye Road in Cleveland, Ohio. You can also check them out and order your coffee at thetaverncoffee.com. Hey everybody, this is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, we've got a packed show here. I think let's start with the NCAA championship. A great tournament, not a great Final Four or championship game. UConn made a run, but I probably at halftime, I never got the inclination that UConn was going to win that game. Did you?
I kind of felt the same thing. Like, I don't know, and I agree with the Final Four too on Saturday.
Yeah,
Like, there was one point where like it became kind of an interesting game. Like they brought it within 10 or 5 or something like that.
yeah, the Illini, yeah,
But then it was just like, no, we know how to win
yeah,
basketball games.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's shout out to Michigan. Um, Definitely not like a Fab Five type of remembrance of a team, but definitely a great
yeah.
run, and they definitely deserved it. So.
Yeah, they've got some really good players. And I made an error last week. I think I said 1-31. They were 7-24 in that first year with Dusty May. So that's still a tremendous, tremendous turnaround. Um, but Michigan, I thought that when UConn tried to slow the game down to their pace, Michigan was like, okay, we could play with that too. And their 7'2" guy is pretty athletic. He made a couple of spectacular plays. But Michigan, I agree with you. I don't know that there's an NBA player. Maybe the guy that got hurt. I don't know that there's an NBA player on Michigan. Even the 7'2" guy, he'd have to gain about 20 pounds to play in the NBA because he's very, very thin. But Chet Holmgren has carved himself out a pretty nice career so far as well. But whereas that on the other hand, I think there's at least two guys on UConn that I could see in the NBA. But man, oh man, I think that Michigan was one of the better teams in the country all year long, and they did a great job. So it was a great tournament, except the Final Four, and we see that happen sometimes, because once you get there, it's sometimes it can be anticlimactic. I want to get your take though on the women's Final Four as UCLA. Hard to believe, right? With all the tradition of UCLA that they had never won a championship um, on the women's side, but they did this time around. And I thought that South Carolina, when they beat UConn, like that was their championship because they got blown out also in the championship game. I watched a little bit of that on Sunday afternoon. Um, but the big story for me was Gino Auriemma going at Dawn Staley, and I just thought that it was awful. You know the optics of it I thought was terrible, and that's not the first time. Auriemma has kind of been like this, and I hate that this will be part of his legacy since he's taken his team to 25 Final Fours. I don't care what sport you're in, man. That is just an amazing, amazing achievement. But he acted like a little crybaby. He's 72 years old. And so apparently he's upset because Staley didn't come out to mid-court to shake his hand in the pregame stuff. I think they still do that in college. They used to do that in the men's one. Maybe they still do. Um, I just don't remember the last few years them doing that. But what was your take on that whole dust up and I thought it took away from what was a wonderful win by South Carolina.
Yeah, it stinks when when you have a very big win, especially against like a team like UConn, with at least with the women's, where all you're talking about is like a weird feud between the head coaches. Um, Definitely like a bizarre thing because I don't know, it just you would think that especially someone that's been there as much as he has, that there would be a lot more of a sense of like maturity and like graciousness.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
what I do recognize, and I want to acknowledge that he did apologize, and he said
yeah,
it was kind of like a bad moment, which I think some people they would kind of double down on it, or they would kind of just ignore it. So I think he did well there.
yeah,
But yeah, I think I hate it because it takes away from the actual story of like South Carolina with a huge win over UConn, and
yeah, yeah,
like that's where I wish that the focus would be more.
yeah. And it was a great season. And what did they win? 70 something in a row before they lost over the course of a couple of seasons, obviously. But and I do agree with you. His first apology was kind of general, but apparently he's apologized directly to Dawn Staley. And I thought she handled it well in that press conference after. She's like, yeah, you're gonna have to ask him about what he said. I just think that um, it's hard to control your emotions at times in sports. I totally get that, and I think we get that, right? But you want to think about the overall big picture, especially with the experience that he has. I would expected that from a much younger, immature coach, but with the experience that he has to know that that would become, the big part of the story when it really shouldn't. His team had a great, great year as well, right? Coming off a championship last year and then almost defending it. But South Carolina, that was a big achievement. And you could tell South Carolina was drained, right? Once they played UCLA, they got blown. I think they lost by almost 30 in the championship game. Um, let's stay in college for a second. And Michael Malone, who I think is a great coach, don't know what happened. Well, we do kind of know what happened in Denver last year. We talked about that extensively. But I was surprised that none of the NBA teams, particularly the Knicks, you and I were talking about that before they hired Mike Brown. Why aren't we talking to Michael Malone? Um, but he goes to North Carolina, which is still, I think, a great job, right, in college. But he's an NBA coach. But then again, I think it brings the college a big time program like North Carolina is it almost like still managing an NBA team the way they're paying players these days. And so I started to think about it a little bit deeper than just they had a guy with really no college coaching experience. Michael Malone's father was Brendan Malone, who was a long, long time NBA assistant, a lot of those years with the Knicks. Um, what's your overall thoughts on them hiring Michael Malone? And is this a pattern you may start to see with some colleges?
Not gonna lie, I was surprised that Michael Malone would take that, especially at this juncture of the year. Because in a couple weeks you're gonna get at least a couple of NBA job openings. a lot of rumblings that Doc Rivers is going to retire
Yeah.
slash not be the Bucks head coach, which with the thought that Giannis might have played his last game there, there's a whole we don't have time to get into that this week, but there's a whole crazy
Oh,
story with that.
yeah.
Um, you would think that he would want to wait a little bit, but I do agree. I think that when you're looking at some of the bigger college spots, whether it's UNC, Duke, UConn, Arizona to some extent, it is a little less about like the recruitment process and building up a system, but more about managing the people that think that they're bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I I think maybe we might start seeing that, especially for the coaches that kind of get a little bit pushed out the door. Like I think that this isn't the best example, but let's say if the way the college sports works now was that way like 5, 6 years ago, guy like David Fizdale might be a good fit.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
kind of got a little shafted when he was with the Knicks. I
Oh,
mean,
no
we
doubt. Yeah. Yeah.
we both know that, but I think
Yeah.
that like if it is a little bit more like the minor league NBA the way that it is now, I think that maybe he would have guys like that. I think might get a different shot. I'm still surprised that no one's even knocking at his door.
I was too. Yeah. Yeah. I was too. So I think, and I'm sure they're paying him a lot of money. I didn't see what that was. I think the recruiting aspect is still there in college, but you add on now the transfer portal, it certainly probably makes recruiting a little easier, especially when you have players that'll get into the portal and say, well, I want to play for North Carolina, but you know what? If Kansas is paying me a little bit more, I'm gonna go there. So I don't know what that aspect adds to recruiting because um, that was always the major difference. Of course, there's a few differences still in the college game and the NBA game, but I see it less and less over the last several years. I used to always say, why do college players keep throwing up these three pointers, because they just never hit them. But I've seen the tournament the last couple of years that's changing. They're getting better and better at the three pointers, right? And it's still a few inches closer, right, than the NBA one, 3-point line. But I'm surprised too that Malone and I'll this will be the last thing we say on this. Billy Donovan to me would have been the ideal candidate, and I don't even know if they, talk to him because he's had moderate success, right, in the NBA. Certainly the Bulls, he hasn't had really any success there just yet. But I would have thought that would have got be a guy, two-time champion in college that you got to call and make him some sort of offer. And maybe they did. We just don't know. It was a strange hire to say the least. Um, since we jump around, last week we didn't talk about the whole Tiger Woods thing. And, Tiger Woods is probably one of the most famous athletes, I don't know, ever. Recognizable. Again, you and I aren't golf fans, but I think we can totally recognize what he meant to golf and what he still means to golf, actually. In fact, uh, it's kind of that almost like video game golf is what I call it, where they have that whole league where they're playing into the big screen and everything, like you could do at an arcade or something like that. But that's become like a professional league, and they're paying them pretty big money. He had played in that, I think, the day or two before, and then he gets into this other car crash, which is, I think, his third or fourth. I don't remember. And he almost lost his leg in one of them. And um, and I think the obvious things that we asked ourselves, you and I think you texted me, how's he still have a license? And I was thinking, why doesn't he have a driver? But I think it speaks to where you can get really addicted to these painkillers. And if you have nobody that's helping you get help, for it, this is what you see. And he's lucky, man, because, this is some sort of truck that he clipped the back of. But if he had ran into that head on, he would have been, I mean, somebody, the Lord's watching out for him, man, you know. So what was your whole take on the whole Tiger Woods thing? And to his credit, he's taking a step back now and he says he's gonna get the help. But he's in a little bit of trouble. I was reading this morning that, that the district attorney's office is subpoenaing his records to make sure that pills he's had were prescribed for him and was he using it the right way? And but what are these pills that he actually had on him? Did he buy those somewhere else as opposed to prescribed? What's your whole take?
Wow, I didn't realize that. My first impression, like you said, was like, how is he driving? Not even so much like, why doesn't he have a personal driver, but like, how is he legally able to have a license? Like, if you or I had like multiple DUIs where we that resulted in crashes, like, probably never have a license again.
Hmm.
Um, Tiger Woods is one of 8 athletes that are worth over $1 billion.
Wow.
Um, Michael Jordan's on that list, LeBron James, Cristiano Ronaldo, like the guys that you would think. And I agree that he is such like he goes way beyond golf as like a person. Like when people say the name Tiger Woods, they know him as even if it's just the black golfer, but they know him that like that's what he did. Like it's not
Yeah.
he's not just a sports specific guy. Um, but I think sometimes when you get to that level, there are people that are in your life but not rooting for your life. And I think maybe that's what Tiger Woods is dealing with. And it seems like we've already seen this happen over and over again. Like weird, mysterious crash where it was pretty serious.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whether it's he has an affair or he's like addicted to drugs or alcohol, whatever might be going on, I think the next big step is he needs to make sure he gets the help. Um, and and yeah, if he did get them illegally, then there's got to be a lot of repercussions for this.
Yeah.
I I do hope that he does. This is finally like it might take you 3 car crashes, but hopefully he finally gets like the wake up call that like, hey, I've got to change something.
Yeah.
Whether that is getting a personal driver, whether that's having a little bit more accountability, whether that's staying clean. Um, we might not know what's going on behind closed doors or like probably a lot of like just the mental aspect because like how old is Tiger Woods? Like in his
He's like,
50s?
I think he turned 50 a little while ago. Yeah.
So like um so he's not a young guy, but also like he's not old enough to be like at the point where he has to retire. But also I think physically he probably can't do what he did
Oh yeah.
15, 20 years ago. So I think maybe some of what's happening is that he's struggling with that.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then like you have to figure out what's your life beyond just being an athlete, which I know a lot of athletes struggle with that,
Yeah.
where like the post retirement and like the plans afterwards is really where a lot of them struggle. So I hope that he gets the help that he needs and that
Yeah.
we see him maybe back on the golf course or something else.
You never know. I think I read that he has had seven, or maybe he said this during this traffic stop. And there's videos out there that show the police footage of the traffic stop. And I think he said that he's had seven back operations. So I'm sure and I don't know how after seven back operations you can still play golf, right? Because you got the torque, right? You have to move, your upper body while your lower body you know, um, stays stable. And I don't, that's, that's got to be hard, but it's no excuse, right? I'm sure he's suffered some severe pain with some of these injuries that he's had. Um, but I mean, listen, you can't kill someone, and I agree with you. I'm glad he's getting help, the help that he needs. I'll ask you this last question, and we'll move over to Dexter Lawrence because I'm really curious to hear your take on that whole thing. Um, does this taint his legacy at all?
I don't think so. Um, because like at this point, it's not like taking away anything. It's like, oh wait, it's 2008 all over again. Like it kind of feels like we've already seen this.
Yeah.
So it's not something that like I'm like, oh well, this is what he's going to be known for.
Okay. Okay. I'm with you. Um, so Dexter Lawrence says he wants to be traded. He's your best defensive player. And now Harbaugh has a little situation on his hands here. What is this all about? I was reading that it is about that he wants a new usually with football players, that's what it's about. Um, but what you fill us in because I'm sure you looked at this and you were probably both stunned and angry because I, I think you need him. I think he's is he the one of the best defensive players in the league? I think so. You got to put him maybe top 10 in there. So what's the whole deal with Dexter Lawrence? What's going on there?
Yeah, I read, I think it was 30 million. He's looking for 30 million for 3 years or something like that. It's all about the contract, and
Yeah.
all I could think of is like, man, we it's been a rough like decade for the Giants. Like, let's go back to the last time they made the playoffs with uh under Ben McAdoo and the infamous boat picture.
Ugh.
And really since then it's been like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we think we're turning a corner. Daniel Jones got us to the playoffs, and then he stunk. And then Saquon is gone. Like, there's been just so much turmoil. And then John Harbaugh comes in, and we're like, okay, I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's excited. The offseason couldn't go any better, and then this happens. And it's just like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
in a good spot.
Yeah.
But I to me, I'm just like, give him the contract. Uh, because when a guy is asking to get traded, you always lose like half the value of what you could get on the market. Um, give him what he wants. That way we can head into the season with a lot of optimism.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. They need Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah.
Part of I think what Harbaugh is like building here, and this is how Baltimore has been built for years, is strong defense, pretty good running game, and a quarterback that can make the plays when he needs to.
Yeah.
Um, so you need that anchor in the middle of the defensive line. So
Yeah.
please don't leave.
Okay. I don't have anything to add. I think you're dead on. They need him. I mean, just pay him. It doesn't sound like it's outrageous either what they're asking. Yeah, as I looked at what he's making, I was like, compared to his peers, he's on the low end. So I totally get it, and his timing, while it may seem bad to us, it's probably perfect for him because he's saying, you know what, we can contend this year, and the Giants can. Obviously, there's a long way to go. We got the draft coming up. We'll talk a lot of NFL. Actually, the draft's not coming up that soon. Yeah, it is actually not too far. Um, and so it's it's funny for us. His timing is terrible, but for him, the timing is probably perfect because I don't think the Giants have much of a choice, right? And you said it when players do that. It's the value goes down right away. All right, we're gonna have a lot of NBA to talk about over the next couple of weeks as the playoffs start. But I have one very important question for you, then, and I want you to be totally honest here. Um, Knicks play the Celtics tonight, first of all, right? And I'm looking forward to that. I think that the Garden is going to be rocking. It's here in New York. It's in the Garden, national television. I think it's on Prime tonight. And so yeah, it's I think it's must see TV tonight. I think it's going to be a great game. Jason Tatum, first time he's back in the Garden since he got hurt. If the Knicks don't get to the finals this year, is this season a disappointment for you?
Uh, yes. A lot of it would depend on how they don't get to the final.
Expand on that.
Like, if they get upset in the first or second round, well, first round, I'll say, like, if they lose in the first round, absolutely. Second round, like right now, unless something crazy happens with the bracket, it looks like they would be facing the Celtics in the second round. Celtics are a tough team. If they lose to the Celtics, it stinks, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Um, they beat the Celtics last year, so I'll add that. But um, but also like Eastern Conference Finals, if you got Cade at full strength and the Pistons just slap him around, and like to me, if they lose to a team that they shouldn't have lost to, then yeah, I would consider it a disappointment. Like if they
Yeah.
lose to the Celtics, they lose to the Pistons, maybe I'd be a little disappointed, but I don't think it would be a failure. Um, However, the whole point of bringing in Mike Brown was because you thought that Thibodeau couldn't take this team to the next level. And if Mike Brown doesn't take them to the finals, then he's not any better than what Thibodeau did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where I'm like, but I think also if they don't make the finals, I'm kind of like unless they make the finals, I'm out on Karl Anthony Towns. Especially with Giannis and the weird situation in Milwaukee and him kind of low key saying, either I'm here or trade me to the Knicks. Like, make the deal.
I I never thought it would go this bad in Milwaukee, but like you said, we can get to that next week because there's a lot of layers. There's been a lot of articles that I found really interesting reading about that this week. Um, so I think the teams you're probably talking about would be Philly, Atlanta, Toronto, Charlotte, right? Would be teams that if the Knicks lost to. Now Charlotte has had, did I read this right? Since the All-Star break, they've had the best record in the NBA. I mean, I think they've run 8 in a row, something like that. I mean, they're young, they're hungry. Um, that team worries me a little bit. So what you're saying, if the Knicks lose to one of those in the first round, that then it's a real disappointment for you?
Yeah, or if let's say they face the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals, like you should be able to beat playoff James Harden. I'm sorry.
I see. I didn't put the Cavs in that category because I think the Cavs are a very good team, and they kind of righted the ship. Although they kind of leveled off. They were really hot after they got Harden. But you're right. You know where everybody's level goes up, Harden for some reason his goes down. Um, I it's hard for me a little bit more than it is for you. Although you watch the Knicks through some tough times. You know the Fizdale and the Isaiah Thomas years and. Um, but for me, it goes back so far, 1973. I mean, it's just hard to believe. It's 50 some odd years. The NBA, though, as now you get to the playoffs, the playoffs really, while they'll be really exciting, it sort of separates, the upper echelon teams. It's usually the upper echelon teams that'll wind up still standing in the conference finals and then the finals, and I just, even though Detroit has had a spectacular year, I just, man for man, are they that much better than the Knicks? And I'll say the same thing with the Celtics. Man for man, are they that better than the Knicks? I mean, they've got 2 stars. We have 2 stars. And I love our supporting cast. I think for me, Kenny, is that the Knicks have just been so darn inconsistent this year that I'm not 100% sure what to expect. I'd like to say, okay, they're going to raise their game up, um, and if they raise their game up again, there's few teams in the NBA that are as good as they are. But we've seen that in only spurts this year. We haven't seen that consistently throughout the year. So I would say for me, I don't think this season will be a disappointment because I think when they fired Thibodeau, um, I felt like this might be again another building block. Not rebuilding, right? Because I think the Knicks are past rebuilding, right? They're certainly not going to do that now. But I think maybe this is another building block. But then at the beginning of the year, you and I talked about this a lot, right? You have the whole Giannis thing hanging over our heads. Should they, shouldn't they? And they obviously decided at the trade deadline or before that no, this season we're not going to. And I think you and I were okay with that, right? We said, well, let's ride this team out because it's going to take more than Karl Anthony Towns to get, Giannis, right? One of these other guys are going to have to go, meaning either Mikal Bridges or OG, who I certainly don't want to lose OG, and I really actually don't want to lose Mikal Bridges. He's a very unique player, even though, his play this year has been, who knows what to expect from him, right? Um, and so for me, I'm not going to say I'd be disappointed. My hopes are really high. I'll say this, and maybe you're feeling this way too. This is the highest my hopes have been in a long time, for because I haven't changed from the beginning of the year. It was more that window because, and I hate to say this, it was because Halliburton got hurt and Tatum was hurt. Well, Tatum is back, which is amazing, right? But all year my hopes were very high that this Knicks team can get to the finals, and then who knows? Whether it's OKC, San Antonio, Denver, Lakers, I think the Knicks could play with all of them. The so uh, I'll say for myself, it wouldn't be a disappointment, but I know I'd be disappointed. But then I'd be looking forward to the offseason and okay, let's bring Giannis in here and let's see what we got for these next couple of years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think also we looked at this year as being this is their window year. And I would hate for that window to close when you
Yeah,
have a full year of Jason
yeah,
Tatum, a healthy Cade Cunningham, a full year of James Harden. Like you
yeah,
look at it and you're like, I don't know, it's going to be more crowded. But
yeah,
also, if you add Giannis to that, I think the Knicks become still the overwhelming favorite.
yeah. I'll say this real quick, and then we'll get over to some baseball because we'll have a lot of time to talk about the NBA and basketball. Um, the fact that Giannis has now publicly admitted that he wants to come to the Knicks, that was the team he directed the Bucks to talk to, right? Um, you and I talked a little bit about Amari Stoudemire going into the Hall of Fame, which did he deserve it or not? You know, and Mike D'Antoni, that's a debate for another day. But what Stoudemire has that place in our hearts, you and I, right? Because he was the first really big free agent in a long time that said, "I want to go to New York," and he embraced it. He didn't want to leave the Knicks, you know. Him and Carmelo never played well together. They didn't have an opportunity to do that because Stoudemire got hurt. But boy, Stoudemire was outstanding that first year with the Knicks, man, and he elevated everybody's game. But after that, it's been, aside from Carmelo, after that, it has been free agent after free agent that has spurned coming to the Knicks. And now that's really changed and Jalen Brunson, I give him all the credit in the world, who said, no, this is where I want to go. Maybe part of it was because his dad was here, but who cares? He said, no, I want to be here. And look at the star he's become. And now you got one of the top five players in the NBA that said, talk to the Knicks. That's where I want to play. So that makes me feel like while these other teams have made moves, I think there's other moves that the Knicks can also make to bring someone else in here. I don't know who that is. We'd have to see how the offseason and playoffs shake out. But I think that the fact that Giannis wants to come here, that sends a good signal for there's other players out there that want to come here. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. Because, yeah,
Yeah.
and for a long time, it was like, who would ever want to go to the Knicks?
Yeah.
A couple of stars said, I'd rather go to the Nets. I mean,
Unfortunately, that's true. All right, let's turn over to baseball as we're a couple of weeks in. Let me go ahead and share your rankings here. And let me get rid of this top part here. And I'm going to turn it over to you, man. Go ahead, take it away.
all right, well, it's been interesting. I think a lot more shuffling in this first set. And there's going to be a lot of shuffling in the first couple weeks just
Oh, yeah.
because
Yeah.
we love to overreact in baseball. But
Yeah.
um, I really liked It's Not What You Want. I don't know if you recognize that as a Joe Girardi quote.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
he would say that a lot
said that a
as the
lot.
Yankees manager.
Yeah,
He's been on the broadcast. I really like him on the Yes broadcast. I think
yeah.
he's
Good.
really
He's a
good.
good announcer. He really is. Yeah, good analyst.
Like and I like how when like a critical decision happens and he kind of walks through the logic of what he would do. Um, as an example, when Stanton stole his first base in I think 4 years, he was saying, "Oh, I think I would pinch hit for Giancarlo here. You're probably not going to get his at bat again, and everything like that."
Yeah.
And he goes and steals second base, advances on a ground ball or advances on a wild pitch and scores. So
Wow. Wow.
um,
Yeah.
it's not what you want. These five teams have not gotten off to a good start. The Red Sox might be slightly low. Um, they have been like an early candidate for, wow, you're a really disappointing team. 4-8 still isn't bad. Like everyone has a 4-8 stretch, just stinks when it's at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not just the start that they've. Same with the Giants. They they played better as of late, but it still seems like their pitching isn't fully there and their offense isn't there at all. You have the A's, who I mean they have a very fun young team, and seeing them up close these last few days, like they could be pretty exciting. Just not off to the best start. White Sox too, like they've had a couple fun moments. Murakami's been fun to watch, but other than that, not a lot. Same with the Nationals. The Nationals are in one of the tougher divisions where everyone above them is either at 500 or better. That's
Yeah.
always tough. Not
Yeah.
what you want, but it is what it is. It's not panic season yet. These five teams had high-ish expectations, but they haven't done it yet. The Blue Jays, you mentioned how they won. They won last night to at least salvage the last game, but they didn't get off to the rip roaring start that some people thought they would.
No.
I think more jarring than them, though, is the team that they faced in the ALCS and the Seattle Mariners. Um, Cal Raleigh has gotten off to an awful start. Julio Rodriguez has gotten off to an awful start. So is Josh Naylor. Um, which like those three guys were like the anchors in their lineup. And it's not that far fetched to think that with all of those guys, maybe the World Baseball Classic was part of that.
Maybe.
Um, but either way, it's a little jarring, especially when you look at who has done well in their division. Now, overall in the American League, it's been a very mid start for everyone. Um, there are three teams currently in the American League that are above 500: the Yankees, the Guardians, and the Rangers. Everyone else is at 500 or worse. Um, there are more teams above 500 in the NL Central than there are in the entire American League.
Hmm.
So everyone's kind of gotten off to a little bit of a slower start, including the Detroit Tigers, who I think their lack of hitting is a little bit more alarming than anybody else.
Yeah.
Uh, Cubs, I had high expectations for the Cubs. They just haven't met it yet. They're 6-6, but sit last in their division. Their division's been really good. We'll get to them in a minute. Um, and also the Padres, the team I can't figure out at all.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's not panic season for any of them because I think that there's still a lot of time. We're roughly 12 games into the season. Like for those that are like, oh my gosh, the season's over, fire the manager. You need to relax. Uh, Next year, I can't believe we're basically a 500 team. Um, it didn't come out that way. I don't know why. I kept putting a period and it kept changing it to a T. I don't know what was going on with the tier maker, but whatever. Um, these teams are either shockingly at 500 or shockingly at 500.
Hmm.
Um, so like the expectations either high or low, but right now they're at 500. Some of them are excited that they're at 500. Some of them are not. The
Yeah.
Orioles are definitely one of those teams that are not.
Hmm.
Um, and I think one of their bigger issues going forward is still that starting pitching. Their rotation does not look good. I think they need that bona fide ace to anchor that rotation. Please don't get it, but that's probably what they need.
He'll
Um,
he'll get going, but Pete Alonso's off to a very slow start.
Yeah,
He does have the one home run, but I think he's batting 180 or something like that. He's off to a little bit of a slow start, as is Jeff McNeil with the A's. Brandon Nemo's off to a good start with the Rangers though. But just not that I'm following the X-Mets, but you know.
McNeil had a big hit in the game yesterday,
Oh,
though.
he did. Okay.
Yeah, it bothers me because they were saying on the broadcast, "Oh yeah, he kills the Yankees." I'm like, "Yep," and he's still killing the Yankees. Um, the Royals, I think that they're a little disappointed with where they are.
Yeah.
I'm not that. I think that they could have a higher ceiling, though. I think that you get the rotation going. They've got a pretty good lineup. I'm not that worried about them. Houston as well. Like I think they're more on like the we're shocked we're this good, but they are just 6-7. They've lost four straight. I don't know what the path is for them moving forward. Tampa Bay, I think, is more on the shocked. Oh yeah, we're actually almost at 500. They're 5-7, and I think that they are a little bit. I think if you're looking at the first couple weeks, you should be happy about where you are. Same with the Diamondbacks, who are 6-6, especially given the injuries that they started out with. But the team I want to focus on is the Colorado Rockies, who coming off of a sweep, um, they're 500, which
Hmm.
sounds like it shouldn't be that impressive, but they are 500 this late in the season for the first time in 4 years.
Wow.
And also the bigger thing, they right now have the longest active winning streak in baseball at 4 games.
Wow.
Um,
Go
so
Rockies.
good for them.
Yeah.
Um, that's why, like, I wish I could put them higher. I probably should have put them in the next tier of Cinderella team question mark. Um, I think you look at some of these teams and you're like, oh, I wonder if they're like kind of like not to college basketball. Are they the team that will be at that next level?
Hmm.
Um, right now, I think Miami is one of the teams that's gotten off to a really, really good start.
Yep.
7-5. Alcantara looks back. Some of their young guys are looking really good as well. I think that they are there. Um, Probably the most compelling team early on has been the Angels.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
they're only 6-7, but
Yeah.
like obviously the whole the brawl made them very like notable to watch,
Yeah.
as well as shout out to Joe Adele with
Oh my
his three
God.
home run
That
robberies.
was amazing. Especially the last one where he falls into
Yeah,
his hands. Why is there no E at the end of Joe with him?
I don't know.
Usually you see it like that, Joe, but it's Joe with just J-O anyway. But what an amazing night. See, there's another thing that we've never seen in baseball before, and both having to do with the Angels. It's amazing.
Also, I'll just point this out because this is kind of a because I don't know how the defensive metrics work, but like the stat defensive runs saved. In my opinion, if you rob a home run, you've saved at least one defensive run.
Oh,
Technically, if like say
no
the
doubt.
bases are loaded, that should be four. So in reality, like he should have like three defensive runs saved. I don't think he earned that much, but he should.
Yeah.
Just that's my
And it was a
that's
one.
my opinion there.
No, I agree with it. And it was a 1-0 game. It's not like he
Yeah,
got these in a blowout. This was a tight, tense game, and he robs all three. It's amazing.
like literally made the difference in the win there.
Yeah.
So also another metric of wins above replacement, like that should be worth one win, if not more. Probably just one win because it literally changed the game. Um, Pittsburgh also 7-5. A lot of excitement about Connor Griffin, who officially has signed a 9-year, $130 million contract.
Well,
Fun fact:
yeah.
his contract will end before Bobby Bonilla's contract will end, or deferred payments will end. So, um, also shout out to the Cardinals. I don't really have much else to say about them, but uh, they're 7-5. Good
They've
for
got
them.
good young players, actually, the Cardinals. I,
Yeah,
I think.
and also the Twins. I thought the Twins would be absolute garbage. Right now, they're second in the division. They're also 6-6. So
Yeah.
I think like if we look and it's June, July, and any of those teams are hunting for a wild card spot, I think people will be very pleased. And people will kind of call them like the team that no one saw coming. Um, The other teams, the next tier, overcoming mixed projections. I think these four teams, either some people didn't really believe in them or believed in them a lot, and they're kind of just there. But I think they're overcoming like the mixed emotions about them. The Guardians have gotten off to a good start, and a lot of people talking about Detroit in that division, Kansas City, but like the Guardians won the division last year. They have one of the best players in the game in
Yep.
Jose Ramirez,
Yep.
who I had texted you this, broken a 108-year-old record by playing the most games of any person in the Cleveland Guardians Indians franchise.
That's hard to believe, man. Because there's been so many players that played there, but wow. I
They've
saw
had
that and I think that's amazing.
they've had legends like
Yeah.
you think of Jim Thome, Manny Ramirez, Kenny Lofton, Bob
Yeah.
Feller. Well, I guess as a pitcher it's harder, but
Yeah.
like, and he's the guy that sits atop. I think it also is a testament to his loyalty, which I think out of
Yeah.
anyone, he's like the most loyal to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Um, Take that, LeBron. Um,
Wow.
which he had a fun comment about how he hates playing in Cleveland. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
the Phillies are 6-6, but I think they're starting to overcome those things. The Braves at 8-5 have one of the best records in baseball. I think they've gotten off to a good start.
Yeah.
Texas Rangers too at 7-5. I think they're a little bit more sustainable because they're starting pitching. So there we go. But then we got the top five. You got the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers are they're the Dodgers. I don't know what else to say about them.
Yeah.
They Shohei Ohtani continues his scoreless inning streak and continues his on base streak. Gave up one unearned run yesterday in the game, so obviously not on him. But man, they like if you look at a team that's ready to defend a championship again, they
Yeah.
are right. And then you got the Yankees, who maybe they want to try to face them in the World Series again. Um, I think what I've liked so much about their start is that they have won in very different ways, which at times we didn't see that in like recent history with the Yankees, where it's like you only win when Aaron Judge hits a home run, or you only win via the home run, or if the starting pitching does this. But like they've won with great starting pitching, they've won with clutch hitting, they've won with home runs. Like I like the different ways that they're winning. They didn't win last night, but can't
Yeah.
win them.
Yeah.
Um, I think also the Brewers have gotten off to a good start.
Yeah.
Uh, like I kept saying, I feel like they didn't replace Freddie Peralta, but they already have an ace in Mizorowski. Like
Yeah.
I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Zarowski's real. I mean, he's the real deal.
yeah, I think he's really good. Uh, I put the Mets above the Marlins and the Braves because I think that out of all of those teams in the East, the fact that the Mets are 7-5 with Juan Soto on the IL, with a lot of their key acquisitions not really doing much to start the year, I think it kind of goes to show that this is kind of the floor for them. Um, and hopefully that's the case, and they can be among those teams to really try to take down the Dodgers. And then
Hmm.
you got the Reds, who also 8-4. Um, there was a lot of concern with me because of Hunter Green and his injury, but they don't seem to mind. So there you go.
Well, you did a great job on these as always. Um, so the Mets, I told you that I wasn't too worried about Juan Soto. He's never really been hurt in his career. Um, Lose him for, 10 games now. Oh man, I'd rather lose him now than 10 games in late September. So and you're right, it gives the other guys a chance. Ronnie Mauricio got called up and he immediately got the game-winning hit the other day. They lost yesterday to the Diamondbacks, but I like this Met team. I mean, they're second in baseball right now in overall pitching, ERA and everything. Their pitching has been great so far. They're hitting not so much as well, it's in spurts. I shouldn't say not so much. Some games they hit like crazy, or some games like yesterday they leave a lot of guys on base. So that'll even out. I don't know if there's any. It's funny because this the beginning of this baseball season for me, Ken, and I'll just say this, and we can move on to some inspiration. Um, The beginning of this baseball season for me has been not there really doesn't seem to be a major surprise just yet. I'm a little surprised by the Red Sox, but I think I'm a little more optimistic about them than you are. I think that the Red Sox will turn it around because I think their pitching is just too good. But
I don't want them to turn it around.
I know you don't. I think I think the Braves, the start you made this point last week. The Braves, the start they got off to last year, they never dug out of that hole, and we've seen that now in a couple of years. So I think teams are very, very, careful to not get into too big of a hole early, or to just not say, it's early. You don't hear that. I see teams seem to be playing with a little bit more sense of urgency. As an example, I got to tune a little bit into the Blue Jays Dodgers yesterday. It was an afternoon game, and there was a sense of urgency with the Blue Jays. I could tell it was like they didn't want to get swept by the Dodgers, number one, but they also had already lost five in a row. And so the those one games, the teams that lose, like the Mets, missed the playoffs by one game last year. So you pick a game in April, that you should have won. Yeah, so I see a
Yeah,
sense of,
well,
yeah,
like I also see it with the Yankees.
yeah,
They tied the Blue Jays last year, and they Jazz made an error at third base while facing the Blue Jays. Like
yeah,
these games do matter a lot more than people make it out to be.
exactly. And I think the managers and coaches are probably sending that message. Hey, we know that it's cold, we know it's April, but we win it. So you don't see anybody that is like 1-10, or it seems like everybody's kind of in that middle of the pack, and I think that now with the expanded playoffs in baseball, it does get late early, because you could kick yourself all winter long if you miss it by a game or two. So I think you did a great job with that. One other quick note, and and then we could jump to some inspiration. Davey Lopes passed away yesterday, at the age of 80. Not a name you're too familiar with. You might remember him as manager of the Brewers for a couple of years, been a coach around for several teams. But for me in my childhood, he was a stalwart of this great infield that the Dodgers had in the 70s and early 80s. And when they finally beat the Yankees, sorry, in 1981, I think that was a strike year. They finally rose up and beat the Yankees after they had lost to them a couple of times in the World Series. But Davey Lopes held a record for a long time until Vince Coleman broke it in 1989, and that was he had the most consecutive stolen bases. He had 38 consecutive stolen bases in 1975. He broke that record from somebody who had had it since the 40s, and the other little known fact is that I was at that game in 1975 because it was the Dodgers against the Mets, and it was Saturday, game of the week, which at the time wasn't televised in New York. And I remember my friend and I went to that game, and they flashed it on the scoreboard, and everybody booed, and Davey Lopes has just broken, the consecutive stolen base, record, and people started booing because they put it on the scoreboard. But an excellent, excellent player, not a Hall of Famer by today's standards, maybe, but not a Hall of Famer by standards back then. All right, you ready for some inspiration?
Let's go.
I've used this one before, but I did a little bit more research on him. So Lyman Bostock is my inspiration today. And I thought about him yesterday, and that's what caused me to jump over to the computer and do a little bit more um, uh, research on it. Francisco Lindor, here's the tie-in. Francisco Lindor is off to another awful start. Although he hit some balls yesterday, ropes, that were caught. But that was that 12 games in, he doesn't have not one homer or one RBI, and he's batting
Ooh,
like 160, something like that. And I hate when he gets off to these bad starts, and he didn't last year, but then he tailed off in the summer, late summer last year. But it reminded me of the start that Lyman Bostock was off to. And so, as a reminder, Lyman Bostock's life was cut short in the 1978 season, late in that season. I'll never forget, my mom woke me up and said, a guy named Lyman Bostock, it's on the news that he was shot and killed last night in Gary, Indiana. And I was like, what? I think he was only 27 or 28 years old. And the story, he's in a car with a family friend, female, that he had known for years. They didn't have any sort of affair or anything like that. She was estranged from her husband who had a lot of mental health issues. He chased them down. They saw that he had a gun, a shotgun, and they tried to drive past him. They thought they had lost him. They pull up to a stoplight. He pulls up alongside them, and he's trying to kill her. And Lyman Bostock is driving, and the bullets hit him, and unfortunately he dies. But what I did a little bit more digging on was because I remembered this, and you would never ever see this today, but neither maybe you shouldn't, right? So Lyman Bostock in 1976 and 77, he becomes a star player with the Minnesota Twins. And in 76, he only has 4 homers, 60 RBIs, but that's not so much his game. He bats 323. He doesn't win the batting title. Actually, he finishes like fourth or fifth. That's how, averages used to be back then, right? And the following year, 77, he really comes into his own, 14 homers, 90 RBIs, and he bats 336. And he also that year doesn't win the batting title. I believe that went to his teammate Rod Carew. But in 19 at the end of the 77 season, it's early in free agency. He's one of the big free agents, and the Angels sign him. And it doesn't sound like much now, but they signed him to a 5-year, $2.3 million contract. Huge money in 1978. But he gets off to an awful start. Like he only has 2 hits or something like that in the whole month of April. And they think it's because of the weight of trying to live up to the contract. And at the end of the year, he calls up Gene Autry, the owner of the Angels, and says, "I want to give you back my salary. I don't want to accept my check for the month of April. I want to give it back to you because I didn't earn a penny because I played so bad." And of course, Gene Autry says, "No, absolutely not." But then here's what I found out, that he takes his full month's salary and he donates it to his mother's church because his mother's church is falling apart and it has to be rebuilt. And he finances the whole rebuilding of his mom's church. And I thought that that was
Uh,
incredible because I was like, did he ever accept the money? And so I had to do a little bit of digging on that because I know Gene Autry was like, absolutely not. And people said, man, that was very characteristic of Bostock, that he was just a really nice guy, very charitable. But that's what he did with his month's salary in the month of April, since he didn't want to accept it because he played terrible. When he got killed late in that season, it was in August. He turned it around, and he at that time, again, 5 homers. That wasn't his game, but he had 71 RBIs, and he was batting 296. For the whole summer, he was batting well over 400. I mean, he turned it around like crazy. And I think a few nights before that, he had hit a big home run against Al Hrabowski. You may not know that name. He was a big pitcher for the Cardinals and then the Royals closer, but he was crazy. His nickname was the Mad Hungarian. Um, and he threw a ball past Bostock's head not once but twice, and Bostock had no choice but to charge the mound. And it was later that week when he was killed. So Lyman Bostock, amazing story, giving his full month's salary back to his mom's church so it could be rebuilt, um, for the kingdom. And so Lyman Bostock, inspiration this week.
and Lindor, if you want to donate your salary, I know
Yeah.
of 2 great places.
Yes. Yes.
Um, well, I'd seen this reel and I was like, I don't know who this guy is. This guy talking to the Kentucky college basketball team. I ended up finding out he's like a random motivational speaker, but what he said I thought was really good, and I wanted to share. He had 2 basketballs and bounced them both. He said they're both full of the same stuff. Um, but then he was talking about like the difference between being a man, being a boy. Saying like, when things go hard and things are tough, but then you can still stand. That shows that you are a man. But like, if you are blaming people, if you don't have the greatest character, if you just go out partying and sleeping around and everything like that, then you're a boy. But the only thing that really can show that is adversity. And then he starts bouncing the ball. Once these balls hit the ground, then you can tell what they're really made of. And then just kind of like I guess he was brought in to give encouragement to like the Kentucky team. This was a couple weeks ago, just as a way to, or at least the real was a couple weeks ago,
Hmm.
um, just as a way to motivate them, not just to be good basketball players, but to be good men. And I
Yeah.
just thought it was good. Um, at
Awesome.
first, I thought it was the coach, and I'm like, wait, no, that's not the coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a good one. So
Awesome.
shout out to Kentucky for bringing that guy.
Awesome. Well, when you find it, send it over. I'll put it on Facebook. Because I post our rankings every week. I could post that as well. Because I love the lesson. It sounds like it was in there. So awesome. 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 Um, all right. Kenny, a lot going on. I think the play-in starts next week, right? For the NBA, and so that should be fun. And then I think the following weekend, next weekend, probably starts the playoffs, and here we go. You know, so go Knicks. The Rangers won't be in the playoffs, so we don't have that warm spring with both, basketball and both the winter sports kind of. But I think the Garden will be rocking for any playoff games. It should be exciting. What we didn't talk about, are you thinking that the Lakers, I mean, I don't know if Luka's going to come back in the playoffs or not. Hopefully he will. You don't think so? And I know Austin Reeves is out 4 to 6 weeks now. We were talking a lot about the Lakers possibly getting to the finals last week, but without those two guys, there's no way, right?
Now,
Yeah.
LeBron's good, but he's not 2018 LeBron willing this team to a championship
No,
or to
no,
a finals.
no,
He's not.
no. Still a very, very, very good player, though, man. I was seeing some of the plays he was making this past week. All right, so lots to get to as baseball continues to heat up. So Kenny, take us home.
All right, this is Kenny Squared N
Kenny.
with Sports on the Positive Tip. Go Knicks. We'll see you guys next week.